Chapter 42. "Can you save none of us?" Thomas asked. Tomas was more man of health than machines. "Tomas has read the books of the old ones. Perhaps something can be done." "You're a doctor?" McCoy asked. Tomas looked around the room at the advanced equipment of an era he'd never dreamed of. "Thomas knows something of care for the injured. A manager is supposed to be able to treat their own. But this? Bao of Dlamius says that you are not gods, but this makes Thomas wonder. I don't know if something can be done, but we'll try. And maybe we can slow it down? Maybe we can stabilize it. Maybe we can, I don't know, grow more potent moss again." Rebecca was throwing out ideas like her head was going to run out of space to hold them all. I didn't have to be an expert on humans to know what she was thinking of. It wasn't the people here, and it wasn't even really Usagi, though I'm sure she felt for the girl. She was thinking about Fove, and what losing Usagi would do to her daughter. The bonds of mankind are a strange thing. They can show a deep love for a complete stranger. They will throw themselves into the sea to rescue a person they've never met, perhaps losing their own life in the process. But this same species will care more for a single life that is close at hand than they will for thousands they haven't met. In a way, it explains their bloody history. It accounts for how a species capable of giving so much of themselves could also come so close to destroying itself in futile conflicts. If this entire people died out, I knew Rebecca would feel sad. She might even need therapy to cope with the loss and her failure to help, but it was her daughter that she cared about most. "Thomas would like to help. I can act as helper to McCoy of Dlamius. You are alone. More hands, more good," he said, and it was hard to argue with the logic. McCoy had clearly seen better days himself. His fur was not neatly brushed, and even for a Dlamacin, his temper was short. "Fine. Get some water and food in you. Eat some of the blue moss here. Get some sleep, and then start joining me up here. You can help me with any new people who show up, and I'll give you the basics of the equipment use. I need to go. I have to take a walk. To clear my head," Rebecca said, and she looked at that moment more tired than I had ever known her. Even during the chaos of Wolfbeard and his father's actions, even with all the harassment that required the armed guards of two worlds to mind against, this was different. "I could use one as well," I said, and followed Rebecca out of the elevator. She leaned against the wall as it hummed and went down, her left hand against her face. She was breathing hard as soon as the motion began. She didn't say anything, though. Not until the elevator opened, and I found Bao standing there waiting for us. She didn't hesitate to speak when she saw Bao's face. "I'm not the right person for this. We need doctors, real doctors, a full team. I'm a biologist, not a medical practitioner." Bao took a step back, surprised by Rebecca's sudden statement. "Is it that bad?" she asked. "Yes. Their genetic code will decay without the radiation, but their resistance is vanishing. God knows how they were made in the first place." Rebecca didn't step off the elevator, and Bao stepped within. The door closed, but instead of going up, she hit the emergency lock to keep us in place and in private. I can't believe something like this evolved without any assistance. Maybe it didn't. Maybe they were subjected to experiments, and this is what happened after everything fell apart. Bao suggested, and Rebecca was forced to consider it in silence for a moment. "Maybe. But even if that's true, it doesn't help us now. If the upper shuttle is able to help the rest come in, we could have a few thousand people here all needing everything." "Look," Rebecca said and took a deep breath. "We need backup. I'll let Fove know to get her father on the line. If we can get an entire team of doctors out here, maybe there's a chance we can do something, or at least get some relief supplies out this way." Bao was deathly quiet. "Do it," she said a second later. "Just do me a favor and don't mention me." I knew her worry. She was afraid of deportation. Her humans needed her, and she'd risk it for them. But she would face trial and an unpleasant existence on Dlamius, or a colony world if she were sent back. I was both proud and saddened right then, against my will. Entirely against my will, I had developed a begrudging respect for my sister. Intelligent, resourceful, clever, and hard-working. I couldn't help but think she belonged here. I didn't want to see this taken away from her. Rebecca seemed to read that in my eyes and said, "I'll come up with something." She walked off alone toward the distant hovering dot of the black drone, and I walked apart from her, this time with Bao. "When you were a geneticist, did you see anything like this?" I asked. "Sort of," Bao answered. "We could create deficiencies or dependencies in the genome. For example, make a body allergic to certain foods, or able to process things it previously couldn't. We could do all kinds of things. Radiation itself, though? That's a new one. I guess it's possible. It must be. We're living it. She growled a little. She didn't carry herself with the same confidence as before. Her body was slumped a little forward, and her haggard and unkempt fur gave her a fearsome edge that was magnified by her growl of frustration. The problem is, it isn't a gene for function. Sometimes one gene serves one purpose, but sometimes genes serve multiple purposes, or sometimes multiple genes act in concert for a simple function. Or you can have genes that serve no function and are just haphazard junk mutations that do nothing. We can't just turn off one thing and turn on another and call ourselves the heroes who saved the day. Her fists were balled up at her sides. Rebecca sent me her data while she was up there, and what McCoy and Scotty had too. I read the short version. Their DNA must take doses of radiation, and biomatter is the only viable way. But without that resistance, it will just... They're being poisoned. And from what I've seen of the power makers, they're just farther along than the rest. Bao did not strike me as a defeatist, but right then, it felt like she was about to buckle under the crushing weight of what she'd taken on. Chapter 43. I wish I were wiser. I really wish I was. A wiser Dlamacen could have thought of something to say, but I had nothing, so we just walked for a while, directionless in our shamble through the ruins of a once great city. The buildings were crumbling around us. Here and there in the distance we could hear the noise of some other thing crumbling into ruin, maybe toppled by one of the long steps or red spears, or maybe toppling over as time finally won its long battle to impose decay on top of decay. There were no squeaks or hints of noise, at least. Our ship had ensured that the rats were thoroughly wiped out. If any at all had survived, they moved on to avoid a predator they couldn't begin to fathom. I to this day believe that Bonnie Red took their attempt at eating her personally. I could practically hear her thoughts. As if the great pirate queen, Bonnie Red, could be brought down by rats unfit to live in the sewage of her ship. And for that, they had to be punished. Evidently insulting a Dlamacen pirate queen was a very unhealthy idea. On the upside, the streets were now safe to walk, though we avoided going too close to the buildings themselves. The sun was bright and the weather cool. The breeze blew bits of bone, pebbles, and leaves around. Chicago was a very windy place. I tried to think of what it must have been like in its glory years, when the buildings were tall and bustling places, and not tombs of the dead, or mines to be harvested for materials to be used in primitive shelters. At its height, Chicago, I would later learn, had 5 million people, before the last truly great war on Earth's soil. And it looked like it. The rusted hulks of old cars littered the streets like metal skeletons. Some of them had bodies inside, the bones of people on their way to work. But others, the bodies were gone, vaporized by the blast that almost destroyed their world. I wondered if the humans who gave the order had family here. Would they have still struck? I found it hard but not impossible to imagine. The whole city was a chilly tomb, and now not 200 paces away, a growing number of hybrid humans could only wait to add their bodies to the toll. The last casualties of a war that ended hundreds of years ago. That probably isn't the legacy they want for themselves, I muttered as we rounded a corner. Come on, you can do better than that. I heard Fauve's voice and raised my head. Bao did the same, and we saw the drone zipping around and flipping through the air, while small rabbitish and cattish children flung small sticks at it. With a few meals in them, and some of the more recently found moss holdings, they were strong enough now to play simple games. Fauve didn't seem to mind the attempts at hitting her drone. It wasn't too surprising. Drones were very sturdy things. A few little sticks weren't going to hurt the thing. She came up with that game, didn't she? Bao asked. I wasn't there, but probably. She's a creative girl. I answered, and we came a little closer. The little ones were in no way healthy enough for games of tag or other demanding games, so Fauve evidently gave them something they could do. The tallest among them was Usagi, who broke sticks and passed them out, then joined in the throwing herself. They were having fun, pure and simple. Usagi's ears were flopping around, and thanks in part to the added meals, she was getting more color in her cheeks than she had before. You have some good humans? Very good humans. Bao said it with a quiet respect that I could appreciate. I know. You too, I answered when Usagi broke a stick into 3 pieces and passed 2 of them out to 2 of the smaller rabbit children close at hand. It was probably a bit of a pang for her to give up 2 throws of her own, but she did it anyway. The little things people do says much about them. I remembered something Professor Sixlith said, a story about his time among the humans when he was first settling in. I never trust a man who treats the server badly at a restaurant, the concierge badly at a hotel, or the taxi driver on their way somewhere. If they'll treat those badly, but not you, it's because they need you, and when they don't, you'll be discarded. It made a disturbing amount of sense, and it perhaps explained why the walkers were able to prosper so much. They were good at picking up on whom to trust, and good at picking partners for their lives. That Usagi would give up a few throws to little ones just to make them happy said a great deal about who she was. "I'm glad you found some good ones," I said, and put my hand on Bao's arm to draw her eyes to me. "I need to go talk to Fove. I'm sure her mother has already told her about the need to call for more teams, or spoken to Fove's father about it. Maybe that's why she's able to have fun right now. But even so..." I watched a few leaves blow past and get whipped up into the breeze, spinning around each other like dancing partners. Their bends and folds and crackling dry material moved with a dancer's grace, and then were carried away and vanished out of view. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding and finished. But even if she has, I should check on her too. Not that I can do much. My frustration must have come out, because it was Bao's turn to stop me as I started to walk away. "You do a lot more than you think, brother. Don't forget that," she said, and released her hold on me, allowing me to walk away without another word. Chapter 44. Fove was approaching Usagi after the last stick was thrown, and the small ones headed over to go pick everything up, ready to make piles and start again, and the two were chattering away like they'd known each other for a lifetime. Right away, I knew something at least had seemed to have gone well. "Hey, Bailey," she exclaimed as I came close. "I was just telling Usagi here the good news. Mom got a hold of Dad and bing, bang, boom. He's going to reach out to his friends and pass on word to Teresa for me. Look, the short version is we can probably get a bunch of doctors out here." I knew what I should have said, but I didn't. I couldn't. I just couldn't. Medicine has come a long way. Everything will be fine. It'll take some work, sure, but with a bunch of our best minds on this, and working with the Dlamisons, it'll be okay. Then the next thing you know, maybe we can get some schools built and figure out how to make enough food for you all. We've got great weapons. We can get rid of all the dangerous creatures. Fove was gushing over Usagi, whose face remained politely smiling, and Fove went on and on about everything we could do, would do, how things would be okay and everyone would be all right. But she hadn't brought up bringing Usagi back. I knew that was still in the back of her mind. When Fove got a notion into her head, it was hard to shake it loose. Usagi waited until the sticks were all piled and picked one up. She booped the tip just at the rim of the lens as if it were Fove's nose. "Usagi is thankful. It would be nice to have a life like that. Beds and blankets that don't let cold in. A house without snow in it that stays warm all year. But Usagi would like to play another game for now. Will Fove play one more time with Usagi?" Her ears flopped down, and Fove's drone bobbed up and down like an eager puppy trying to get at a ball held just out of reach. "Sure thing. But before that, Bailey, did you need anything?" she asked. I shook my head. No, I just thought I watched as Usagi tossed the stick up and down, and my eyes homed in on it. My head rose up and down as it spun hypnotically through the air. From a distance, when they were hitting the ground and just skidding away, I could ignore the lure they offered. But up close, with the promise of a throw, I could not look away. "I just thought I'd watch you all play for a little while and..." Fove interrupted. "Usagi, trust me," Fove said. "Throw the stick as far as you can." Usagi did as Fove wished, and I was chasing after the blasted thing before I knew what I was doing. It wasn't until I heard their laughter that I realized I'd caught up to it and had it clenched in my jaws. I stared at them and dropped the stick into my hand. I stared at the stick. I looked back up at them. Usagi, it seemed, was very capable of smiling. Her lips spread over her face and her ears twitched with excitement, like she was ready to start laughing for the first time in her life and didn't know what was happening. I approached the pair, and even without being able to see Fove's face, I knew that she had that unbearably adorable smug look, like she'd gotten me somehow. And she had. Usagi mirrored it a fair bit. Her smile cracked as if she wanted to laugh but was afraid to do so. Fove, however, laughed for her. Usagi looked at the stick in my hand and up to my face. Her ears flopped over. It did not take an anthropologist to know that she was wondering if she'd done something wrong, if she was going to be punished or criticized for the throw. She wanted to laugh. She wanted to enjoy the moment, but wasn't quite sure how to respond until I held the stick out and my tongue lolled out of my mouth and I said, "Okay, throw it again, but harder this time. Really put some muscle into it. Give it a good high arc and make me work for it," I said just loud enough to be heard over Fove's laughter. And when Usagi realized I wasn't going to yell at her, that she had not only done nothing wrong, but done something right, tentative laughter came out, and she slid one leg back in a spear-throwing stance. Her arm went back. She looked at me again just as my posture shifted. I had one eye up on the rabbity girl, And when the gleam of anticipation was shining in her previously hollow, empty eyes, Fove shouted, "Throw!" The drone zipped out of the way, and the stick flew from Usagi's hand. I don't know why we can't resist these things. It's not like we chase every stray leaf, rolling rock or log or whatever else. Other races have had thrown grenades, and to the best of my knowledge we've never chased after those. But a stick from a human hand, or evidently a human hybrid hand, or a ball thrown for sport. Suddenly we're all chase and return. Happiness pure and simple flooded my brain, and it let me forget the things I should have said, but had not the will to say. I wanted to tell Fove that she should hand over the controls to someone else. Anyone could pilot a drone. To tell her to brace herself, to draw back from Usagi before she got hurt.